Our today's topic is long-term planning and pMRP, predictive material and resource planning. Okay. So before starting our today's session, we will quickly go through our last session, what we discussed in our last session. In our last session, we discussed majorly on the batch management configuration, where we discuss about the uh, basic batch management simplification. That is what is there in SAP S/4HANA. First thing that we discussed a couple of times earlier also, where we discuss in very detail about how batch management simplification has been added from SAP version 1909. That is an extra field is coming up in the material master to identify the material specifically to activate for the specific plant within one company code. Then we discuss in very detail about the batch determination process for the production order creation, where we discuss manual batch determination as well as automatic batch determination. In the manual that for the manual batch determination, it's very simple and quick. Without doing any more configuration, we can easily activate the material as a batch manage for raw material, and without class, we can easily do the manual batch determination. But to do automatic batch determination for the production order, we need to have some configuration that we need to do it, like we need to create condition table, then access sequence, then we need to create the batch search strategy type that will be assigned to your batch search procedure, and finally we need to assign the batch search procedure to your order type in the order type dependent parameter is called OPLAT. Also at the same time, we need to create a material master raw material with the class which is having the characteristics, and with the same characteristics we need to create the selection class and sort sequence in the configuration. And finally, we can configure search strategy for the order type plus plant plus material, which will actually help us to determine the exact batch based on the class and characteristics. That's what we discuss in detail. We run a couple of scenarios for that. Then we discuss in detail about what type of different configuration, what we discussed earlier, where are the configuration point, and one by one how to configure it. That also I kept it here in the PPT. And finally, at the end, we discuss about the capacity planning and capacity leveling, this part. So the basic main function of the capacity planning is just to check the works load on the work center. Okay, for a future plan or any demand, if we are running MRP system, is creating the plan orders. Okay, our MRP is actually working with an infinite capacity. Okay, while considering your work center is always available, and MRP try to push the plan orders on the same days, although capacity is not available. It's called infinite capacity planning. Okay, your MRP engine material that is already there in ECC. Earlier it was with MD01 is traditional MRP. Now SAP S/4HANA came up with MRP Live. That also is not actually working on the capacity constraint while doing the planning. So once the capacity is getting overloaded and on a specific day or a specific week or a specific month for a specific work center, then planner has to come to the planning table and he has to level the capacity based on the requirement, based on the priority of the work order. And that work is happening in SAP ECC as well as in SAP S/4HANA manually. Okay. If you want to do some optimized capacity planning and optimized capacity scheduling and planning, in that case, earlier we used to have a APO module. Now in SAP S/4HANA, we have a IBP module. Within IBP, we have a PPDS where we can do that kind of finite capacity planning and scheduling. That's what we discuss, and then we actually gone through the transaction code with CM01, where we actually analyze the capacity workload on the work center, and then we tried to level the capacity by CM21, which actually change the plan orders dates based on the available capacity of work center. Till that point, we discuss majorly in our yesterday session, we discuss only capacity planning and your batch determination. Now our today's topic is long-term planning and pMRP. So before starting our today's topic, I just want to know if you have any kind of questions on a capacity planning and our batch determination process. Before start, you can ask me now. Okay, guys. I hope there are no any questions on our yesterday's topic, but if still you have any kind of question, you can put it in our forum. We will try to answer in the incoming week. Okay. Okay, so we will start with long-term planning. So, guys, can you tell me about the long-term planning? What do you know about the long-term planning? Before going ahead, anyone can
Uh,
unmute and tell me. Yeah.
Long-term planning is just a simulation planning. It is utilized to know how much capacity required in future and how many people we need to fire, how many people we need to hire, and how much material we have to advancedly book with the vendors, with the contracts, and like planning of materials, planning of resources, planning of future machinery capacities is possible with the long-term planning. It is not the original plan, it is operated with the version, it is an inactive version. So that we can directly involve in the original plan, we can check with the already existing plans with this simulation plan. Along with both together, we can watch the future requirements.
That's very correct statement. Capacity plan, sorry, your long-term planning is nothing but is a simulation planning. On simulation mode, you are doing the planning for your future demands, correct? So then, see, if our long-term planning is allowing us to check the future demands, okay? To check the future demands. This can be happen. We can check the future demands in directly MD63. Then what else capacity this long-term planning is giving us here? In the long-term planning, actually, we can check the future demands at all BOM levels. At all BOM levels. That means we are able to do the long-term planning for a future demands. We are able to explore the bill of material, and for all level, we will be able to see what is the future demand for each level of material, semi-finish and raw materials. And also we will be able to check the current manufacturing capacity, correct? Current manufacturing capacity at a simulation mode. As you said, is very correct statement that it is not a real planning. Okay, we are able to do the planning at a simulation mode where we will be able to check our manufacturing capacity. Also, we can check vendor uh, ability supply the material, correct? I'll say supply raw materials. We can check the vendor ability to supply the raw material. So, and as you said, it's not a real run, that will happen at a simulation mode. So basically our long-term planning, our LTP, this planning is kind of planning engine, same like our MRP, okay, what we have, that will provide us the methods of one is simulation for planning, correct? Simulation planning for future demands, okay? That means we can do the planning at a simulation mode for a future demands, future incoming demands. Also, we will be able to preview the preview the capacity, correct? Third thing, what we can see here, we can preview the planning cost also. It's not just we can see the capacity and go ahead. We can preview the planning cost, like for the specific future demand, what will be my planning cost, correct? Also, we can preview raw materials purchasing information. What is purchasing information? We can just run our capacity, long-term planning at a simulation mode, and we can see, okay, for this incoming finished material demand, what is the requirement of raw material in the quantity as well as in the price, that we can share it to our purchasing department, so that the purchasing department can take the necessary actions on that. Also, we can see, okay, current raw material stock is this much. For the future incoming finished material demand, this is the requirement for the raw material. Hence, purchasing department can go ahead and check with the vendor whether the vendor is able to supply the material on time for that specific things. This is what long-term planning tells us. Okay. So basically, in the long-term planning in SAP, when we are trying to map that kind of scenario, we do have 5 main steps. Okay, that we need to follow. Major steps. What is the 5 steps are there? First, we need to create the planning scenario. Correct. Create planning scenario. Then we need to define the forecast plan for that scenario. Define forecast plan for that scenario. Then third is that we need to run the simulated material requirement planning run. It's called, I'll say it's as a LTP run. Okay, let me see one thing, just a minute, guys. And the fourth is analyze the result. And last but not least is transfer the results to the purchasing department or your finance department. For purchasing department, you are supposed to transfer the purchasing information. For finance department or controlling department, you can say, okay, this much of different production activities that we need to do in future incoming for that future incoming forecast. So we can transfer this information, transfer the results to purchasing department or finance department. I'm not saying the here finance department, it should go to the controlling department. So FIC I'll say here. Okay. So that's what the major step that we need to, that we can do with this long-term planning. Just a minute, guys. Give me 1 minute. Let me see. Is there anything? Okay. Okay, Ash, no problem. Yeah. So this is what long-term planning in SAP. Okay, so we will go in detail about all the steps, and we will try to find out everything with different transaction code. I'll put it in a different slide. Okay, so before jumping into the system and directly start configuring these things in the SAP, I'll go and we will try to understand the fundamental long-term planning process. Okay, and then we will go ahead and we will start configuring this thing. Before going ahead, I just want to know if you have any kind of question on that part.
Sir, for LTP, there is any specific period defined for it means 1 year or
Planning
2 years.
horizon. No, no.
Yeah, planning
It
horizon.
depends on the business process. Okay, like for how long you want to do the your simulation planning. Majorly, it happens for a year by year. Many companies actually used to do the year by year long term planning. It's not more than that. But if you want to do for let's say 2 years, then also you can do it. Not an issue.
Okay, and there is a specific product. It means repetitive manufacturing or distributed
Any
manufacturing.
product that
Any.
you can plan it.
Okay.
You are just here doing the simulation planning where you are supposed to consider your future demand. Based on that, system will explore the bill of material and it will say, okay, this many semi-finished material you need, this many raw materials you need, and maybe in the specific month you will be coming up with some capacity constraint because your running capacity for that specific month there are, let's say, every day you are putting a demand of 100 quantity, okay, but in specific month you are having, let's say in month of December you are having long holidays for 5 days, okay, so that time you might not be able to complete the demand what is there in that for that month. So that time system will say, okay, in this month you are having some capacity constraint, and that kind of reporting is not only for the capacity, this is for the manufacturing system will show you the capacity constraint. For purchasing raw material system say, okay, for this month there is a huge demand and that's the reason you may need a raw material. Normally you are purchasing in this many bulk, okay, but for this specific money you need some extra raw materials, right? So that information that you can get it from the purchasing table also. So these are the information long-term planning will be able to provide you. Based on that, planner will take a action. Maybe if there is a capacity constraint, then planner will think about to put some extra machine over there or extra manpower over there, right? Or maybe it will say, okay, if there is a huge demand, then for the specific month we are not able to manufacture that demand, right? So in that case, planner maybe go ahead and it will try to pass this demand to some other month wherever there is a capacity available. So that kind of information we can get it from the long-term planning. It's not dedicated to the repetitive manufacturing or discrete manufacturing. Any product
Okay.
you can do it. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yep. So okay, let's talk about a basic planning process first. Our traditional planning. What we are actually doing, we are creating plan independent requirement by MD61, correct? In our current system, or your normal planning procedure at active. Just a minute, guys. Okay, at active version, correct? I'll put it as 00 here so that it will be more understanding. Then what we are actually doing in the SAP, once we have a plan, we are doing MRP run. I'll put MRP here. MRP. What MRP will do? MRP will create a plan order for in-house produced material and purchase requisition for externally produced material. Correct? I'll put it here. Plan order and purchase requisition. Purchase requisition. Okay. Then what we are actually doing, once plan order is there with you, you are trying to convert this plan order to the production order. Correct? I'll put it here. Production order. And then once you are trying to create a production order, you need to check, the planner need to check whether my capacity is available or whether there are any capacity constraint. That's what in our yesterday's session we discussed, how actually planner is checking the capacity, whether it is overloading or not, correct? Based on that, basically planner will do capacity planning, I'll say. Then if there is overload on the capacity, then planner will try to level the capacity. It's called capacity leveling. Capacity leveling. And if capacity leveling and everything is done, is as expected, all capacity is available, then we will move ahead with actual production. Correct? This is how our actual production planning happen. Actual production means your production order release and confirmation and all that things. Okay, the same thing will happen for your purchase requisition. So basically, when PR is there, we the purchase person or any procurement guy used to call that vendor and maybe will check whether he's able to provide that material on a specific date before raising any purchase order, right? So what actually happened in SAP, we are just creating purchase requisition, purchase order. From purchase requisition, we used to create a purchase requisition to purchase order. But in between that, the guy used to do the same, like here we are doing capacity planning. Here, check the vendor ability to and stock, correct? Check vendor ability and stock information. That thing actually our purchase department used to do before. This is out of SAP, but that thing actually we used to that purchase department has to do that things, correct? So this is our traditional MRP, right? We are creating this thing, PIR. From PIR, system will go ahead and will create plan orders. I'll just add it so that it will be more descriptive. Then plan order to raw material purchase requisition, correct? Then plan order to production order. Then production order, once it's done, capacity planning. Then capacity leveling, and finally your actual production. So in our yesterday's session, we saw this part. This is most critical part for any planner to do the capacity planning within SAP, right? This is the part. So there are so many constraints because our MRP is not actually working on the that kind of model where capacity constraint will be taken in a picture, right? So this is most critical part for any planner to do within SAP R3. The same way, if you are talking about raw material procurement, okay, this part is actually most critical. So we in SAP we are also creating purchase requisition to purchase order, but actually that planner or that material planner used to do this thing, and then based on the information he used to create a purchase order. Let's say now what SAP is saying, if you have a plan, okay, for let's say for a future demands, if you have a plan for a future year, then before going to the actual situation and doing this kind of constraint, we have one model where you try to run your planning at a simulation mode and try to minimize this red color part. Okay, system will try to show you, okay, this is the constraint where it's coming, and you should take an action based on that. And this is nothing but my long-term planning. Okay, I'll put here the long-term planning. Okay, so what actually happens in long-term planning now we will see. As we see, there are 5 major topics, right? Major things that we need to do. I'll put long-term planning with separate color, and then we will try to identify how long-term planning is coming in a picture and is creating something different for us. What we said, like in the long-term planning, we need to create first planning scenario, correct? But before that, let's say we have plan at active version. So what we can do, we can copy this plan to inactive version to do some separation. It's not a mandatory step, okay? It's not a mandatory, but I'll tell you why planner used to do this thing. First, planner used to copy this PIR to inactive version. So I'll put here inactive version as a 03 because this is one of the activated and configured in the system. Any version that you can do. Okay. Now, what first step I did? I copied the plan from active version to inactive version. Now I have a plan at an inactive version. Now parallelly, what I'll do with that inactive version, I'll create one planning scenario. Okay, I'll say planning scenario with MS31 transaction. That transaction code we will discuss later. Okay, and based on that information, we will run with the help of this, planning scenario. We will run MRP. I'll mention it as a simulation because this planning version what we are talking about here is not active. So if you are running your original MRP, it will plan only this part which is active over there. So anyway, for a long-term planning, if you are saying, okay, my plan is here, but still you want to do directly simulation planning with active version, then also system will allow you. But if there are some complications and planner want to change the demand, in that case, your change demand will not be captured in your real MRP. That is the reason. First, what I did, I copied the plan from active version to inactive version. And for the same inactive version, I have created one planning scenario. And with the help of that planning scenario, now we are doing my simulation planning. Now, after simulation planning, once you run the simulation planning by transaction code MS01 or MS02, right? MS01 or MS02. That is the transaction code to run that MRP. Here we are used to run the MRP with MD01. Now in SAP S/4HANA, it's MD01N, correct? This is the transaction. I'll just put it here for the information. Okay, then what will happen once we run the MRP system? Do the planning and calculation at a simulation mode, and it will create the plan orders also for you. Okay, everything, but it is not a real plan orders. That is still at a simulation one. That is not going to impact on your running planning or running production. Now, what SAP has given for that? Once we do this, SAP has given some reporting tool. Okay, and it's called as a analysis. I'll put it here as a analyze plan. I'll say there are different transaction code to analyze, like MS04 is stock requirement list, same like MD04. Then MS70, you will see in detail what is MS70. Then MSEC, and then KSPP. These kind of different analysis tools available for my long-term planning results. Now SAP will provide me this much of information for my future demands, which actually help planner to take a corrective action. Okay, this kind of information actually help planner to take a corrective action. Okay, this is the situation, this is the capacity is overloading, or this is what raw materials requirement is hitting at a very high. Earlier my purchasing trend is per month 1000 kg, but now for the specific month is saying 10,000. So all information that you can get it here. Based on that, your material planner or production planner will be easily able to take the action what should be done in that specific month, correct? So I can say here as a take necessary action. Okay, like I'll put here like if change demand for that month, let's say, correct? If planner want to change demand because he's not actually fulfilling the thing, or increase capacity, as that kind of information or that kind of actions that planner can take it here. Okay. So what will happen once, just a minute. Okay. What will happen, let's say, if there is a change in plan or change in demand, let's say for a specific month, the demand was 100. For next month, it was 100, but maybe my manufacturing product is a seasonal product, and the specific month of December, demand is very high. And that's actually create so many problems for raw material procurement as well as my manufacturing or something. There are two options for that planner. Either he can distribute the demand in between other month, like if my demand is going very high at a December, he can distribute some of demand in November, then in month of August, April, like that way, and he'll try to produce that material in advance, right? So ultimately what planner is actually doing here, planner is changing the demand, right? If planner is changing the demand based on the situations on the simulation mode, that demand should go to your actual planning, correct? Is, let's say, for a specific material for a specific month, demand was 1000, and for other month is 500, and that's okay. But wherever there is a demand of 1000, system is creating a capacity constraint for him. Now after long term planning, that planner came to know because of this high demand there is a capacity constraint. Now what he is doing, he's changing the demand plan. Instead of putting 1000 there, what he will do, for that specific month he will reduce the demand to 600, and prior to that month he will distribute remaining 400 for the different months, right? So ultimately my plan orders and this thing for the real manufacturing should come like that way. In that case, what we need to do, that planner has to copy the plan. Okay, I'll put it here. Planner has to copy the plan to active version. Copy the plan to active version. I'll again say it as a 00, so that my running real MRP will consider that plan and do accordingly. Ultimately, my this red part will get reduced, correct? Because I have already done all the parts. Wherever there is a problem, I just first identified, and based on that, I have changed the demand. It's ultimately reducing my capacity planning and all that things. But this is only, we need to do this activity if we are really changing my demand. If we are not actually changing my demand, then no need to do, correct? So I'll put here with some different line. So what I'm saying, if there is a change in demand based on my real capacity situation, then only I'll copy that plan to here, and then I'll go for the MRP, and next part will go ahead as it is. If there is a no demand plan change, that means whatever we have planned for the specific month as a 1000, we are keeping it as 1000, and still we are planning with doing some capacity leveling or increasing the capacity or adding some extra line for that specific month. In that case, you no need to do this activity, correct, to active demand. And then you can go ahead and you can do your production. That's how actually long-term planning help us, this color, to do the planning in a simulation mode, find out the capacity constraint, raw material, vendor supply ability, and all that things, analyze it. Based on that, take the necessary action and go for your real planning. This is what SAP long-term planning is.